Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Pruitt. I'm going to be taking you through some of the new exciting changes we have in our property management division. One thing I do want to say up front is please use the question bar. It should be on the right side of your screen to ask any questions. I'm going to try to stop at the end of each area for these questions prior to moving on to a new section. That way we can keep everything moving quickly. One thing we've been doing is we've been discussing a lot of these new features internally, trying to find a new way as a company to help improve the environment for our clients and most importantly our agents. The first thing that we're going to go into today is the new dashboard and the property management features within the dashboard. If you look at the screen, you will notice under the contracts section when we click on it that there is a subsection for property management. Most agents have used this section. It's where you would upload such things as your management agreement, your A194As, or any other miscellaneous paperwork requested by the broker. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually utilize this same section to create our disbursement sheets. So if you click on, let me back up here. If you notice, here's the files. In this case, this is just a sample database. There's only 2 property management files. But if I wanted to create a file, we'll start with this one because it's a new file for us. There's nothing loaded in here yet. Again, it's just a sample file. But if I want to create a disbursement sheet for this file, I would simply go right here to this tab with the plus sign and the property management logo on it. You would click on that, and this brings you to the all-new property management dashboard. Now, if you notice a couple of key things here, this is a little mini accounting software and notes section for our agents. It is not anything that's self-populated. This would be on each agent to fill out using their own current data. You could also contact our office if you do not have your current cash flows or you somehow misplaced those, and we could create this data for you, but you would have to ultimately go back to this page to enter it. A couple of positive things to note here. It does add everything up in each category. So if I had $100 in the owner's reserve, I had $10 in tenant overage, and I had $2,000 in tenant's deposit, you'll notice right here that it subtotals it and then also puts in their total deposits. Okay? Another nice feature that I think will really help a lot of our agents stay organized and kind of on the ball is this notes field. For instance, if I knew this property here had a home warranty, I could fill that information in. So you could fill that in there, and the nice thing is that you could come back to that information from anywhere, from your computer at work, from your smartphone, and you could access that information. So if you were out with your family to dinner on a Friday night, you did not have this file with you, you could go right to the file online through your smartphone and find out, okay, this has an Old Republic home warranty, here's the policy number, here's the phone number. You could also put such things as your owner's phone numbers, your tenant's contact info. In a day of tracking everything and disclosing everything, you also put miscellaneous notes. That this tenant called in on June 24th with a water heater repair that we had fixed on June 25th. So anything that you feel is pertinent to this property, this is a good place to document it. The next part of this is obviously the main part we're all here for, which is the disbursement sheets. If you'll notice, there's 4 sheets to choose from. The first, right here, which is highlighted, is deposit of monies only. So this would be used in the case of you just wanting to deposit funds into the account. The next form is the deposit with disbursement. So this would be what most agents are doing currently. This would be where you're depositing funds into the account and also cutting funds back out. This down here would be disbursements only, so it would be just when you are cutting money out of the account. And then lastly would be our security deposit refund. So I'm going to briefly take you through each sheet. I'm going to start with the deposit with disbursement just because it's the full sheet. So if I click on that sheet, it brings up the first part of this sheet. If you notice, we're on step 1 of 3. So this is the deposit section. So it would be the equivalent to our existing sheet, the upper half of the existing sheet. If you notice right here, there's no longer a place for you to fill out the address, to fill out the name, and the tenant name. This would all be self-populated from your file within West USA. So what you would do is you would go right into here, and you would put your rents collected. So in this case, we'll just use a sample amount of 1,000. By default, it'll put the we will use the month that we're in for the rent deposit. So if you fill this sheet out and submit it in December, we would log this as December rent. We do have this added field here, so if you want to go ahead and do a partial payment for November or a prepaid rent for January, you could go ahead and notate that here as well. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just put partial November and January, and December rent. Okay, so let's say in this case the tenant also overpaid us by $10 here, so we could notate that. We would do a sample amount of $20 for rental tax collected, and then let's just say the tenant had $500 in refundable deposit. Now, one thing that it won't allow you to do, it will not allow you to move on to the next screen until you select where the deposit's to be held. If you select owner, you would just key it there. If you want to select broker, it would be here. Note one thing, on the next screen when we get to disbursements, it will automatically transfer that $500 deposit to the broker, and I will bring that up when we see that again. Going down here, let's just say we had $100 in other income as a tenant admin fee. The deposit method, if you notice, we have 4 options here to choose from: certified funds, personal check, ACH, and Paylease. Paylease is a new thing that we're going to be rolling out. Some agents have already been piloting this program. I will go ahead and discuss this later on in our webinar here, but it's an exciting new feature that we're going to be launching. So for the sake of this example, we're going to go ahead and use certified funds. The next category is asking if you're revising a previous transaction. Generally, we're going to select no, but if you are revising a previous transaction, let's say that you're correcting, it's not $1,000 rent, it's $900 rent and $200 in other income as a tenant admin fee. You would just go ahead and select yes in that case, go back and change those numbers. But for this example, we're going to say no. So right here, if you notice, it totals it all down at the bottom, $1,630. Again, you could put notes if you want to put in there. It would be totally up to you. So at this point, we're going to hit continue. Now, before we fill out any of our disbursements, which is the equivalent to our lower half of our previous sheet, you'll notice right down here that it shows total submitted $1,630. And if you notice that there's already $500 as dispersed, well, as I mentioned previously, when you select broker deposit, it automatically transfers that funds to the broker. So it's automatically going to fill that out. That way it's one less step that you as the agents have to do. Okay, so at this case we know we have $1,630. Right here we know that our rental tax was $20, and you could type in whatever city or whatever tax authority you need the check to be printed to. In this case I'm just going to put City of Peoria. Let's say there was a $100 commission. Now by default, this is just a sample file. By default it will have your name pre-filled there. If anything's spelled wrong or it needs to be adjusted, you could always correct that. I'll just go ahead and put my name in for this example. And then we could kind of figure everything else out. We got a processing fee of $13. We have a management fee of, we'll call the management fee here $67. And we'll say also to Dave Pruitt. And then if you notice, we have a couple other options that we can use. We can deposit money into the owner's reserve. This is also a new field. This would obviously put the money in a holding account here with the owner or for the owner. The other option is you can cut the money out to the owner via a check. Also, you could use your late fees. You could do more commission. But the other nice thing down here is you could use this to pay your bills, which is kind of what we currently have, but there's now 10 lines on here. I don't think anybody has more than 10 miscellaneous bills, but if you do, obviously, we would have to just do another disbursement sheet using this field over here. But going down to here, let's say we have a pool bill to Pool Man. We'll call it $100 for pool service. Right now you notice we have only $800 dispersed, so we're going to have another $830 that we need to account for. So I'm going to go ahead and put $200 into the owner's account. In this case, the owner's name that we have on file is Smith, and that we'll go ahead and disperse the final $630 to the owner. So right there, everything lines up. $1,630 dispersed, $1,630 submitted. At this point, you could also change it to a revised transaction if you forgot on the previous page, but most people are just going to go ahead and move forward. When you move forward, it pops up this screen and says, please review the transaction. If correct, click Save and Print below to continue. Otherwise, use the previous page to go back. So what this is doing is this is your final chance to kind of proofread everything, make sure that we're good to go. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and look through each line. Okay, that looks correct. Over here, that looks correct. If you notice down here, it gives you $100 in bills. That will be what this category adds up to. So in this case, we only have one bill, but if we want to have multiple bills, they'd all be stated right here, and they would all be subtotaled up here. So everything lines up. At this point, we're just going to hit Save and Print. And what that's going to do is it's going to generate the same form into a PDF. Now, in the times where you're going to be emailing a form, or it's going to be an automatic payment or a revised form, obviously all you would need to do here is save it, and then you could save it to your desktop, wherever you feel that it's pertinent to get this information to. But then what you could do is email it over to Kelly or email it to our office. The other option is, obviously, if you're using paper checks or any sort of cashier's check money order, you're going to need to print this form up. So what you would do is you would click the print button, and this form would print up on your printer, and you would attach it to your payment, whether it's check, cashier's check, and send that to our office. Obviously, we're still going to require these things in paper for paper transactions such as checks. Also, if you have bills, we're still going to need a copy of the bills for reimbursement. We don't need copies of bills paid to Poolman. We need copies of bills that are going to be paid to Dave Pruitt to reimburse for, an electric bill or a plumbing bill or anything that you may have paid out of pocket. We have one question. Is there an option to save the management fee and rental tax so we don't have to input it monthly? That's a good question, and I'm going to address that in the next section here. What's going on is this transaction automatically has saved into the dashboard. So I'm going to go back to start over. Actually, let's go back. We'll go all the way back to the beginning. We'll go back to the home page. Just like we're logging in as a new agent, and we'll pretend this is the following month. You're going to go right back into contracts. You're going to go right into the property management section. Click on the file that we were just in. Click on the property management dashboard section. And if you notice, this is the last transaction we've done. Now, it'll obviously show the last 4 or 5 transactions. You could also go right here to search by month if you needed to pull up any specific forms. But in this case, if I go back to my deposit with disbursement sheet, it's going to self-populate everything that we've done previously. So it's actually based off of your most recent disbursement upload. So in that case, this is partially correct, but we're still going to need to change this. I'm assuming that most people aren't going to have more deposits coming in and such. So in this case, we can just delete this field and make the corrections as needed. There would be no deposit, so we would clear that out. Maybe they're paying by personal check this time. There's going to be no admin fee this time. So you would just modify this as needed. And right here, we're at 1,030. We could hit continue. And so this brings us to our disbursement sheet. Right now, in this case, we're dispersing out 1,130, and we only brought in 1,030. So we can make the necessary adjustments by doing as such. We already have an owner's reserve, so we could clear this out. And maybe we just add the $100 that we were going to use to the check to the owner. So in that case, it brings up a new sheet. We would hit Save and Print after reviewing all the information. And away we would go. It would bring us back to the PDF for that transaction. We would, in the case of a personal check, we would print this off, attach it to the check, and send it to my office. Addresses for vendor. The new question we have is, where do we enter addresses for vendors? So let's go back. Let's say in this case, this most recent transaction we did, we forgot that we had to pay a vendor bill. So I'm going to pull up this deposit with disbursement sheet again. Now this case, we're going to be making a correction. So I'd be entering right here, revised previous transaction. Yes. Hit continue. Now if you notice, it shows up here in the corner, this is a revised transaction. So let's say we forgot to pay a bill for Mustang Plumbing. So we'll enter that in. If I could type. We'll say $200 fix sewer line. And we will assume that this is going to get adjusted off the owner's funds here. So again, check to make sure everything balances. Now, Mustang Plumbing might be a new vendor. Maybe it's something that we've never used before. So down here on disbursement notes, you could put please add Mustang Plumbing as a new vendor. Their address is, and you know, obviously I'm not going to go through the whole address, but we'll just call it 310 West Willow. And so what would happen is that Kelly would then see these in the notes that's printed out to her when you print out your disbursement sheet, and she would add this vendor to our list and add everything in there as far as an address goes. Same thing as, let's say, you know, some existing vendors that you have are missing addresses. You could, you know, write that in the notes. You know, the existing vendor I'm using, Poolman, does not have an address on the checks. Could you please go ahead and add the following address in there? And we can do that. That's not a big issue. We do have one more question, and that is, where is the button to email Kelly? There is no button to email Kelly. When you get back to this sheet, give me a second here, when we get to our disbursement sheet that's created via this program into a PDF, you would save the PDF to your desktop and then email it from whatever email program you're using. So if that's Gmail, you would email it through Gmail. If you use an Outlook or any other mail server, you could use any sort of mail server that you have to yourself to email that to Kelly. Most people have her email address. If for some reason there's anybody who doesn't have their email address, please give me a call. I can make that available. It's also on our website, and I'll get into that later as well. Is there any other questions before we move on? I got a question that says, where do you enter existing, or when you enter an existing vendor, does it come up automatically? I'm not really sure of that question. You know, if all vendors are in the system as entered, and so, you know, it would be a vendor that you have, and we wouldn't know, you know, if someone, let's say someone was trying to use Mustang Plumbing, and we already have them entered in there, we would use the current vendor on file. But, you know, just to be safe, if you're using a vendor that you're unfamiliar with, I would obviously add them in there, add all their address and personal information. I have one last thing. I did get a question that says, is the webinar being recorded? Yes, this is recorded, so if you guys need to come back to review this information down the road, you definitely can do that. We're going to try to get it posted on the West USA Property Management website, as well as the West USA dashboard. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next section of this, which is going to be just the depositing of money and just the cutting of money. So in this case, let's say we had an owner who was just signing up, and they just were given their initial funds. So what we could do here is go right to this section of deposit monies only. It would bring up this sheet, and let's say you receive $400 from the owner via personal check, and it's not a revised transaction. We would enter all that information into the system. We would hit continue. Again, it would bring us to a similar screen as we've had before, just on the left side, showing that $400 was brought in from the owner. We would save and print. We would then print this PDF and attach the check to it and submit it to our office. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and move to the next transaction, which is going to be just cutting checks. The example I'll use here is, you know, there's a plumbing leak, and the owner has money already sitting in their account, so you don't need to bring more money in. You just need to get a check cut out to pay this vendor. You can go right down here to miscellaneous bills. Mustang Plumbing we'll use again as our example. $200, and you can put in your notes as a sewer leak. Again, in this case, there would be a $13 processing fee. Right down here, it would show total dispersed, $213. Again, I'm going to just show you what happens when you try to go through without hitting that button. It's going to highlight that and show that you have to select something here for revised previous transaction. In this case, I'm going to assume it's the first time doing this transaction. We're going to hit continue. Again, it's going to bring us to the same sheet, this time with just the right side or the disbursement side completed. Again, it shows down here that the subtotal is bills, and all bills would be outlined here. So again, if we had multiple bills, we had a plumbing leak and a drywall repair, all that would be available to you. Hit save and print. Again, every time you hit save and print, it's going to log this on your dashboard. So you'll notice right here the same disbursement sheet, and you would print this off and attach. Well, I'm sorry, this is a form that you could actually just email. You could certainly print it off and submit it to our office live, or this is a form that you could expedite by emailing. Okay. One thing that I want to bring up during this time is that we have a lot of agents that are having inconsistent management fees. And that's something that West USA as a main office is definitely looking into. If your management fee in your agreement says that it's $100 a month and you're collecting $100 every month for 5 years, and suddenly your management fee jumps to $300 or even $110, they're going to question where did that additional funds come from. And they're going to first review your management file to see if there's been any changes to your management fee. And if there's not, they're going to contact you and ask you, why are you changing your management fee? Sometimes it's just a simple thing of that they accidentally added their late fees into the file. Sometimes it's just an error. They just incidentally put additional funds. So one thing that I want to bring up at this time is that you definitely need to be consistent with your management fees, and it's something that's going to be an ongoing situation, and it's going to be ongoing. It's going to be scrutinized, going forward. So please make sure your management fees are consistent. Before I move on from the actual new dashboard, I do want to show how each one of these forms is logged. So if you can see here, each form that we've done so far today is right here saved, and you can't delete them, you can't remove them. They're going to be there forever. So again, if you make a revision or you need to make a revision, you're going to go through that same revision process that I just discussed. I have a couple more questions that have come up. Can we break down expense category of payment to one vendor? Example, handyman did $100 for plumbing, $100 for electrical, etc. You can certainly do that. The issue is you would have to cut a check for each transaction. So we'll go back here just to disbursements. Again, this preloaded the data, if you notice, from our most recent transaction. But it has Mustang Plumbing for $200. Let's say we'll change this to Bill the Handyman. You can certainly put $200 plumbing. And we can go Bill the Handyman again. $200 electrical. So it's infinite, but you're going to have to separate those out into each category here. Again, we try to consolidate these checks per property, but in this case, it might just be easier to separate those checks out into two separate checks just for the sake of the description. We have another question. Just to be clear, we have to always print and email all disbursement sheets, even if there's no check to submit. No. If you're not submitting a check, you can simply save the disbursement sheet and email it to us. You don't have to physically print the disbursement sheet off and send it in. That can be a simple, in this case, we'll continue. We will get to the end of this, which will generate a PDF. And in this case, all I would do is save it to my file, wherever you're going to save it to generate it to your email or attach it to your email. So, to clarify the question is that we still need to get a copy of these. We have to have them come through our file. We're not going to go search through each dashboard file to find out if there's any new disbursements on there. It just would be too difficult. Okay, we're going to do the last part of the dashboard here, which is the security deposit refund. Very similar to the form we're using now. We did add some fields down here to just clarify everything. So again, let's say we had a $2,000 deposit here, but there was some damages. There was, the carpets need to be cleaned. So we need to have the $200 to the owner. Again, these fields will be populated. This is just a sample form, so it's not filled out. But for some reason, let's say there was a misspelling of the name or whatnot, you could change that here. And again, going back, there's $1,800 going to the tenant. Okay, so that'd be a total of $2,000 that you're requesting from the security deposit trust account. We're going to clarify that down here. $1,800. Again, this would populate to the tenant, but let's just say the tenant is John Smith. Now, that would be cutting out $1,800 out of that $2,000. From here, you can choose what you want to do with the other $200 that we have penciled for the owner. You can cut checks directly from here to a vendor if you needed a check expedited. There is a processing fee for that. The other thing that you could do is you could put the fund back in the owner's account. Again, this will be self-populated with the owner's name. And you could cut this back in the owner's account and then pay all the bills at once. You may have multiple bills other than this carpet bill or whatnot. So again, it would account right here, 2,000, 2,000, and 2,000. It shows down here dispersed, requested. The other nice feature, like I said, is that you could just back this out, put a $13 processing fee here, and you could pay the vendor directly. Pete's Cleaning. $187. Carpet cleaning. So again, that is an option. Most people choose to not use that option. Most people put it back in the owner's account and then pay all the bills at once, but that certainly is one way to do it. Again, you would click the save field and it would generate the disbursement sheet. Apparently we're having a technical difficulty here, so this sheet isn't being generated right here, but it is live on the it will be live on the MyWestUSA site later today. Okay, I have some more questions that have popped up. Receipts are required for reimbursement, but not if the check goes directly to the vendor. That's correct. We do not require receipts from you unless the checks are being cut directly to you. Obviously, it's a good policy to maintain. I would hope that everyone's maintaining their receipts because, in our paperwork and in our office policy with you guys, it says that you're retaining all receipts. So make sure that you are keeping those available if we should ever request them. How do we submit our ACH tenants? So again, going back to this form, deposit with disbursement, you would just select right down here, ACH. So this is all the different payment options that you have. And in the case of ACH, that's how you would do it. For those of you who weren't present in the initial meeting and the follow-up meetings that we had, we no longer are charging an additional fee for ACH. It is all the same processing fee. It's 1% or $13. When submitting a new file, do we still need to turn it into property management lease setup? I'm going to get to that in a minute, but the answer is the forms have changed quite a bit. As far as WestUSA goes, and I'm going to give you guys a checklist later in the webinar, what WestUSA Property Management, our division, is going to require still is any disbursement sheets need to be submitted to us, any funds need to be submitted to us, any setup sheets need to be submitted to us, and copies of any bills need to be submitted to us. The last form that we would require, which is optional, is ACH authorization packets. Obviously, not many people are currently using those. We would like to see more people use them. But if you do have a client that is going to be signing up for our ACH program, which I will also discuss later in the webinar, that would be where you submitted this to my office. I have another couple of questions, and then we'll wrap it up. If $13 processing fee is already paid for that month, but now another disbursement has to be ordered, will another $13 fee be charged? Yes. For example, if I have rent collected on December 1st and it is processed, and then January's rent comes in December 21st, that would be another full transaction that's done, hence another fee will be charged. Another question is, and it's the last one, how long after submitting a disbursement do we have to make revisions? You can make revisions really infinitely. We don't have a set time for that. Obviously, it could become into a situation where checks have already been released to you, and if that's the case, we would have to get all checks returned to revise that disbursement. So, if it's just a simple accounting thing, it would be an easy fix, but really, any revisions or changes to accounting can be done, as far out as needed to make everything compliant. Any last questions? Okay, we're going to move on to our next section, which is discussing our revised property management website. So if you notice here, most people are familiar with this site, but if you notice here, I've changed the title of this subsection to be Property Management Agent Forms. If you click on that, I've separated these into two different categories. This is the most frequently used property management paperwork, and down here is additional helpful property management paperwork. The very first form is obviously our agent packet. This has also been revised to reflect the current policies. Right here on the very first sheet, it talks about where you can go to view all our forms in detail, and as well as a little welcome letter. And also the main thing it discusses right here is an email address for Kelly and the fax number. So if you ever, most people don't fax anymore. This is an e-fax, but if you're on the run and you have to get something submitted to us, this is an alternate way to do it. This full packet has everything that really you need in it. Let's see, I'm trying to get it to go down here. Okay, it's not working with me. We're having a little technical difficulties. Give me just 1 second here. Give us just one more minute, folks. We're trying to get this thing up and running again. Okay, we're going to switch browsers here. Okay, going back into the property management agent forms, again, there's the agent packet, and that's the same packet we've always had. Again, it does have revised data in there as far as time frames and things of that nature. But the other big form, and it kind of answers the question we had earlier about, about what paperwork is submitted where. I did a revised checklist or a form just says, where does my paperwork go? And this breaks on everything. So again, paperwork that's submitted to the property management division is the rental payments, disbursement sheets after completion on the MyWest USA dashboard, security deposit disposition sheets. Again, these are also on the MyWest USA dashboard. Property setup sheets, and again, just a little reminder that there is still a $10 setup fee required for all new properties. Signed ACH packet when needed, and copy of bills for reimbursements only. Stuff that's submitted to the dashboard or paperwork submitted to the dashboard is going to be the property management agreement, the A194As, all W-9s, the A107 rental checklist when needed, lease agreements, agency disclosure, lead-based paint disclosure, lease renewals, property management renewals, property management cancellations, and transfers. So again, I mean, nothing too overwhelming. The nice thing for our agents is that there's no longer going to have to be W-9 submitted to my office. There's no longer going to be, if deposits are being transferred to the owners, we no longer are going to require copies of the leases to do that because we're going to have access right to the dashboard to go check that without bothering you to do so. Obviously, like anything, if it's not on the dashboard or it's not there, we'll send you a note letting you know, hey, we still need this information. Okay. Next thing I want to talk about is some of these additional forms that we have here. The A190 the A194 property management agreement, this is for the local people. The A195 is what we've relabeled the same property management agreement, and that's for foreign investors. And this, the only difference here is it has the W8 ECI, which is what's required tax purpose-wise for these owners that are out of the country. So again, W8 ECI at the end of that. Here's our setup sheet. Again, this is a required document. And then this is the ACH agent packet and the ACH authorization. So again, we require every agent who wants to participate in the ACH program to sign this form and send it back to us. And if you have a client that wants to sign up on that, they would need to complete this and send this back with a copy of a voided check. Some people don't have these voided checks, so what they have to do is obtain a letter from their bank, which also can be attached to this form. Another new form that we have, which Sue Fluke, the new Office Manager at Surprise, has offered up to us, and really I feel is a good form, is just a quick property management agreement checklist, and this is just to help keep agents straight on getting stuff submitted initially when they sign a new management agreement. Again, it just shows the PM setup sheet fully completed, the PMA, all signatures required, W8 or W9 signed and dated, the ACH authorization with a copy of voided check if applicable, verification that property has been registered with the county, property tax records, late letter explanation if you've submitted your property management 5 days later than the last signature date, and then other items is just any little miscellaneous items that you want to have added in there. Okay. Another thing that Sue and I have been working on is coming up with additional forms that are branded by West USA and handy to help with any of the needs that you may have. Now, most of these forms you can also get on Dr. Victor, which is where I've always referred our agents to. But the nice thing is that Sue's actually pulled these off the site and branded them for West USA. So I'm just going to open one here for an abandonment notice. Give me a second. It's just downloading this form. And while this is downloading, I do have a question. The question is, what is the verification of registration with the county? You know, Maricopa County requires now to have the property be registered as a rental property. So it's something good to have. West USA doesn't necessarily require it. I personally recommend and administratively recommend that you do get a copy of this either from your client that they filled out or that you go on to Maricopa and assist them in filling this out. But essentially what it does is it just verifies the property. It has been reclassified as, you know, as a rental, as a residential rental and not a residential owner-occupied property. Give me a second. I'm going to try to... Okay, so here's the form as I was telling you guys about. Again, it's just a blank abandonment notice that you could fill out, but it's all branded to West USA, and you can just change the pertinent information as applicable to your property. And again, there's a lot of really good notices in here, a lot of really good forms in here, extension of the property management agreement, HOA notice, landscaping notices. So I would really encourage everybody to go through these forms in depth and see if there's anything here that will help improve your business. Any questions before we move on? Okay. The last topic that we're going to talk about is Paylease. And let me get that up here. Paylease is a new payment program that's an alternate method than paying via personal check or paying, you know, via ACH or certified payment. What this does is it allows you or your client to go to our website. Right now it's currently not on there because we're in the last phase of implementation, or they can go to the Paylease section themselves. And what they can do is actually go on and click right here to pay now and make a payment to you as the property manager. And so again, it'll be uploaded with all the agents' properties onto our website, and you guys will also be receiving an email from Paylease directly within the next week. And what it's going to do, it's going to send out to you all the property addresses that we have on file loaded for you, and let you know that these are available now for your tenants to use. It'll also be giving you some more information to disperse to them via a marketing packet, and it'll really outline the process. Now, the nice thing about Paylease is that the tenants select the day of when it's going to be paid. So if it's the 2nd of the month and John has his money to pay the rent, he goes right on the Paylease and selects the Pay Now, fills out all the information, selects his payment amount that he needs to pay to you, and submits it. Now, at this point, you're notified via email as well as ourselves that John is trying to make a payment to you for $1,000. You can choose to let that payment go through if it's correctly, but let's say John owes you $2,000 and you don't want to have a situation where he's making a partial payment. You could actually go right into the system and decline that payment, and then you can notify John that, hey, we received your notification of payment, but your rent's $2,000, not $1,000, so we've declined that payment. You have roughly 2 hours to go onto the system, as explained by Paylease, and decline it. After that 2 hours have expired, you have an additional 24 to 48 hours to contact Paylease via phone or email. Their customer support team to let them know, hey, this payment's trying to go through. I need to make sure it's stopped and returned to the consumer. Paylease does charge a fee to the tenant for this. There will be no increased charge from us. The fee that Paylease charges each tenant is roughly $2.95. So there is a fee, but for those who like to control when the payment comes in or when it doesn't go in, this is a good alternate method for them. This payment is also processed under the same time frame as an ACH. So to give you an outline time-wise of the processing of this payment, if John Smith wanted to go make his rent payment on the 1st and he went on to Paylease on January 1st, it would send an email out to us and also an email out to you saying that John Smith is making his payment. It takes roughly 48 to 72 hours for that payment to actually process. When that payment actually processes, they'll send another email out saying John Smith's payment has processed and is being deposited in the account. At that point, you can email over your disbursement sheet to Kelly. You can submit it in person to Kelly. Again, just select that section in the dashboard that says Paylease, so we're aware of how the payment's coming in. And at that point, we have the same turnaround as a cashiered check. So at that point, it would be up to 4 business days. The reason being is once those payments go into our account, they still can come back as NSF up to 48 hours. So we still have that 4-day processing turnaround in place. But again, a lot of agents, what they're doing is having their payments, having them initiate the payment prior to the 1st, like the 29th or 30th. That way the payment hits on the 1st or 2nd. And so Paylease also notifies them of this as well, just so they're kind of aware of the timing turnarounds. Okay, we have a question on this. Do we receive notice from West USA when a tenant pays by ACH so a full report can be made out? I'm not sure if they're talking about Paylease or they're talking about the ACH program. 2 different programs here, guys. The ACH program is automatically pulled by us. It's something where a tenant signs up for. In the paperwork, we notify the tenant that it'll be pulled between the 1st and the 5th of every month. And what happens is these payments generally go in the first Monday, or the first day after the 1st. So if the 1st is a Sunday, we generally try to pull those on the 2nd, sometimes the 3rd, just depending on the time frames and how they work out. But there is no notification that, hey, this has been pulled. It's automatically done. And in the case of ACH, most agents email those forms over well before the 1st of the month. So there wouldn't be a notification. The only time we would notify you on ACH is if they actually come back. Paylease is a different situation. When they go online to make a Paylease payment, you will be emailed initially for the initiation statement, and then you'll also be emailed 2 to 3 days later letting you know that, hey, the money is now available for use. Okay, another follow-up question. When is Paylease going to be available for the tenant's use? We have uploaded that into the system about 2 weeks ago. They were just doing the final touches. So you guys are going to actually be notified via email, should be over the next week, of when this is available. It's going to be coming from Paylease directly, and they'll also be notifying you of your login name and password. At that point, you can go onto the Paylease site, which is right here, paylease.com. There will also be a sign-in on my webpage that we just visited, which is westusapropertymanagement.com, and you'll be able to go sign in and see what properties are loaded. Now, some people's properties haven't been loaded because they have inaccurate data to us. For example, I have a couple agents that did not fill out zip codes or that did not fill out cities when they set up their property. So in that case, Paylease cannot set those files up unless they're totally complete. So if you go online and you notice, hey, I don't have anything submitted here, I don't have all my properties, what you need to do is contact our office and find out what information is missing, and then what we can do is upload that information to Paylease on your behalf, and the tenants will be able to start using that information. Again, all these properties, I'm going to give you an example right here on this. This is from the main Paylease page, and again, they can pay from the main Paylease page, they can pay from our page. I'm also going to be sending out, for those that are interested, a link that you can put on your own personal website, which will also be able to have them pay from your own personal website, give you a little bit more marketing exposure. But, in here, let's say this is a new user. They can register as a property manager. They can register as a renter or homeowner. Obviously, these are all going to be set up for you, so this will never be a function that's needed. But as far as renter and homeowner registration go, we don't have homeowners on this. It'll only be renters. But they can go right in here and select how it applies to them. So on renters, we don't have any, we don't have any main properties that have been set up yet. But you can start going into here, and they can actually search their property. This is a pretty big apartment complex, or I'm sorry, townhouse complex, so you can see there's a lot in here. But if this was our property right here, they could select it, and they can move forward as the tenant with the property. Any other questions? I think that's going to wrap up everything that we're doing here today. Again, I always welcome you guys to shoot me an email or call me, and we can discuss any questions that you have on this further or in person. Also, going back to the dashboard, I realize that not everybody may have that information at their hands or readily available. And so if there's any missing data that you need from us to help fill in those gaps, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to be able to help you out with that. I do have one more question that's popped up. Are we still doing cash flow statements manually and not loaded into the dashboard? You are always going to get a cash flow back from us. That's always going to happen. It is going to be sent back with your checks as it's always been done. Another question, can I get a copy of the webinar? This webinar is, as mentioned in the beginning for those who missed it, this is also going to be posted on the West USA website. I'm also going to try to get a link to that on my website as well. Last question, should we start using the dashboard system now? That would be my recommendation. One thing that may help a lot of people, again, the information is all going to self-populate, but if you guys have some extra time this holiday season and you want to go ahead and get on there and fill out all your forms, I would recommend you do so. You can start filling out all these disbursement sheets for your habitual people that pay the same every month and that have the same bills every month. You can get all those completed. Give me a second. I'll go back into that.